And the last part, Baron, like I said earlier in the other video, one previous to this, the duration is up 30 seconds. Baron now lasts 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So some changes to the buffs. Red and blue buff will only last 90 seconds now, a minute and a half down from 2 minutes, but the first clear will still give you a 2-minute buff to help with early jungle clears and whatnot. The red buff, kind of confusing here. Rather than doing 4 times your level at 1.5 and 3 seconds for the tick, it does 2 plus 2 times your level at 1.5 and 3 seconds per tick, and it now applies a free ticket damage on application or reapplication, in addition to applying or extending the damage of the first effect. I think that means, like, I don't think there's like a diminishing return on it. If you have really high attack speed, you'll apply this buff multiple times really quickly. Like, so if you have a Kog'Maw, max attack speed with a Hurricane applying it to everyone, oh boy, it's going to be scary. The slow is now 25% at level 11, a little bit stronger than 20%. This is a really big change here, though. This was something that was seldom thought of as a strength of this buff, and often people didn't even realize it was a thing. 1% of your maximum health per 5 seconds all the time is what you got for health regen, having the red buff. Now you gain 1, 3, and 9%. Sorry, 9%. Pretty huge. Maximum health per 5 seconds, depending on being level 1, 6, and 11. If you're level 11, if you have a red buff for the duration of that red buff, you'll be getting 9% of your max health every 5 seconds. I think I had it on Renekton. I had like 1 or 2 health items, and I was getting like 35 health a second. Works like a Warmog's, though. It's out of combat regen. So if you're in combat, it doesn't work. Being in combat with champions, turrets, or epic monsters. So I don't think minions will break it for you. But depending, like, for tankier characters, getting a red buff, you'll be able to like heal back up like you, not like you had a Warmogs, but you get it. Blue buff no longer grants flat ability power, but it just amplifies your ability power, gives you 15% bonus ability power. So now if you have that 1000 AP fantasy, plus you have 3 dragons and an elder dragon and a blue buff, you're at what now? 51% increased ability power. Okay, that's quite a lot. The mana regen per second is now 5 plus 1% of your maximum mana rather than half a percent of your maximum mana. Will give you a lot more mana regen in the window that you can use it, but keep in mind it's 30 seconds shorter on the total duration unless it's the first one of the game. Jungle timers, I think this is really Careberry, but whatever, it'll be something we get used to. Jungle timers for all buff camp and epic monster respawns now automatically grant both teams a 30-second warning before the timer. So basically it'll be a little hourglass if that buff's about to spawn. Whether you had vision of it and knew that it was cleared or not, it'll then tell you 60 seconds before it's about to spawn, that icon will change to a gray hourglass. And a respawn icon will change from the gray hourglass to a yellow hourglass when the buff's 20 seconds from being away. And then you can time it from there, even if you don't have the timer. I don't really know about that change, but it's whatever. Something you'll get used to and forget that it was ever a different way. Turrets, really big change here to keep in mind for diving. I have gotten destroyed on turret dives since the patch came out. This is a really big change for the damage the turrets put out. Turret damage increases instead of random numbers that it used to be. It's 40% every shot for the first 3 shots. And if it switches turret aggro if you're juggling turret aggro for a turret dive, it no longer partially resets when it switches targets. It'll just start chunking that next person for how much it was ramped up. It only ramps up to 220%. It used to be 225%. It took 4 shots to do that before. Now it only takes 3, and it doesn't drop the aggro, or drop the damage if it switches aggro targets. So all of a sudden you're tanking. You're a tanky character. You're not taking much damage. You step out, and your AD carry takes 1 turret hit, and it gets hit for like 400 something and dies instantly. Whoops. Something to watch out for. I find this part confusing where they keep changing the minion's health, the minion's stats, the turret's health, the turret stats, all of this stuff. It keeps the game really hard to be able to eyeball and expect what you're going to be able to do to the turret, even if you've played that same champion hundreds of games with that same items, hundreds of games. It's really hard to eyeball what you're going to be able to do. But anyway, Turret base health down 700, base armor up 40, base magic resist up 40. Turrets are now subject to armor pen and magic pen effects, so having flat armor pen or flat magic pen will actually make you do more damage to the tower. Effectively, that health nerf will just be a big nerf to the tower because you're still doing about the same amount of damage because you're just going right through their armor or magic resistance if you have enough penetration. Fortification, outer turret defense now applies to non-champion sources as well. So instead of blocking 30 damage from champion basic attacks, it blocks 35% damage reduction from all sources, including minions and whatnot, is going to be hitting that tower. So if you're getting like proxied by a Singe and there's nothing you can do about it, and all you can do is farm under your tower, and the minions are hitting your tower, and you're just trying to last hit them, your tower will die a little bit slower because they're taking 35% damage from those minions. You'd be surprised how fast that minion damage ramps up if every wave is just crashing into your tower and hitting it from the beginning of the game. Turrets no longer grant 200 bonus armor and magic resistance since they're affected by armor and magic pen. You could make builds that would actually be able to backdoor towers really easy, even if with minions not being there. That's why towers are so strong when minions aren't there, is because they gain this armor and magic resistance. Now they just gain physical and magic damage reduction by 66% of the damage done, and you can't really get around that. Ability power versus turrets. When ability power is more than double your bonus attack damage, it's a lot of math stuff. It's going to be confusing for a lot of people that just kind of play casually. Poor casuals. Your basic attacks against the turret scale with 50% of your ability power instead of 100% of your base damage. Makes sense. It's actually really nice. Base attack scaling off ability power will now deal magic damage to turrets. Your base attack is still physical. Your magic damage is going to be magic damage to the turret. So that's going to help you theoretically if you're a mage and you're dealing magic damage because you have a lot of magic damage to the turret. You probably have a little bit of magic pen, so you're actually going to be able to make more use of that magic damage than you would have if that physical damage, if it was all converted to physical. Turret rewards, local gold for killing outer towers. You're split pushing, you're that top laner, your lane's dead or done something or teleported and you choose to get back to lane because you're super greedy and your team all hates you, but you're determined to get this tower. This tower will now give you 300 gold for killing it. You have to be in local gold range. That is a kill. That's a kill worth of gold for killing the tower. If you're not near the tower, no one's near the tower when it dies, sad day, out of luck. That's 300 gold wasted that someone could have had. You still split it with your teammates, so if there's a guy with you up there trying to rob you, you'll both get 150. Global gold is now 100 per teammate rather than 125, so you're actually only getting a little bit more, 55 more. Still feels friggin' great to be getting 400 gold to kill that tower. You just first blooded your tower. Maximum team gold is actually down 45 on that tower. Local gold is down on inner towers. Global gold is down on inner towers. And overall team gold is down 200 and no longer grants global experience. And there's gold from inhibitor towers for local gold and global gold. Maximum team gold is 800 from inhibitor towers. It just didn't have local gold before. So I just experienced this actually in my last game. Non-epic jungle monsters will now only grant experience to their killers. So if you're in range to leech experience from your jungler and they kill it, you actually won't leech the experience unless it's an epic jungle monster. Jungle monsters' experience rewards no longer increase when you're lower level than the slain monsters. All jungle items now grant 30 bonus experience on monster kill for each a level higher than you the monster is. Hunter's Machete and Talisman grant 50 bonus experience on large monster kill. This is what I ran into. I actually did the Wraith camp. I started with Maokai and I was like, I'll just do the big one as well. I didn't even get half a level from level 1 to finish that camp, where if I just did the small minions, I would have gotten a similar amount of experience. A little less, but about 1 lane minion less worth of experience to just instantly kill the small ones and walk away rather than killing the big one. Whereas a jungler would have gotten level 2 from killing that camp with a jungle item. So that's how big they've changed the experience on that. I'm doubting bot lanes are going to really be taking the camp anymore because it's going to give them not that much of an advantage in lane. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Based on the above changes, total jungle experience rewards have been adjusted. Overall, junglers get slightly more experience per clear, while non-junglers get slightly less. They're just trying to give the jungle back to the junglers, man. Just let them be. Death timers are now slightly reduced for between 20 and 35 minutes. Home Guard enchantment now scales with game. The haste duration is only 7 seconds, and it doesn't give you 175 movement speed all the time. It goes from 75 at 20 minutes, and it doesn't fully scale to 150, which is still less than what it was before at 20 minutes, until 40 minutes, so you feel a lot slower. There's going to be a lot less counter throw based on the enemy team going and killing the team that overstayed with home guards, because you're going to have less duration and less movement speed from it. Azir's Wall, now we're just into normal patch stuff. Azir's Wall no longer tries to, or it tries to not pin people to walls. It'll rather push them over the wall and whatnot there. Alawi, tentacles that appear in the Fog of War are no longer visible until the person actually sees them in the Fog of War. Vessels can no longer clear their debuff, so if you get vesseled by Alawi, you can't clear the debuff, and the tentacles are no longer prevented from spawning if you're recalling. The overall debuff duration, however, is went from 60 to 12 seconds, and the tentacles spawn once every 543 seconds rather than once every 10 seconds. You're getting less tentacles overall if they were to not break their vessel. Probably they were going to break their vessel, so you're more than likely going to get more tentacles overall, but they're spawn faster and closer together, both in time, and tentacles spawn from vessels spawn 700 units apart, so they're spawned closer together in that fashion, and it'll give you a lot more usable stuff, because she's very reliant on those tentacles, because a lot of her abilities interact with them, and if you can't get them down in usable situations, Alawi's going to keep sucking like she sucks right now, like a sucker. Kindred nerfs cooldown in Wolf's Frenzy when you use your Q in your W. You used to get 2 seconds. The cooldown would be reduced to 2 seconds. Now it's reduced to 4 seconds, scaling down to 2 seconds at level 9. But at level 1, it's not going to be or level 2. Sorry, I should say. It's not going to be completely insane. So big early game nerf to Kindred. Wolf's Frenzy duration is a little bit up. Hunter's Vigor gains less charge from movement speed. So it charges itself slower by moving around, but it charges up when Lamb basic attacks, and Wolf deals 50% more damage to bonus monsters. I'm assuming that's to kind of make up for the early game that they nerfed by nerfing the Q. I don't know for sure, though. Mordekaiser gets a bigger dragon with more health for the Elder Dragon. Makes sense. Nidalee, her execute damage is down early on, but a little bit better later on in the game, where she kind of starts to feel like she's falling off. It used to be 1.5% extra damage per 1% of the target's missing health. Now it's just a 1-to-1 and doesn't scale to 1.5% until Nidalee is level 11. And then it's a little higher than it was when she's hit 16. Rengar, a little bit of changes. There's just a bunch of bugs here. Fixes, basically. You can kind of go back and read that if you want. And now Jump Strikes will now proc energized effects. But a lot of bug fixes with Rengar. Soraka is slow on her Q, no longer scales up to ridiculous amounts. The rejuvenation movement speed is lower. And on top of all of that, the rejuvenation no longer refreshes her wind speakers. Soraka nerfs, everybody's happy. There's a big Soraka nerf coming up here. I'll show you in the changes that we talked about a little earlier. I foreshadowed. Taric, base mana up, because his mana costs in lane are pretty high early, but base mana growth stat down, so he doesn't over mana. The W range to cast on your friend, 300 less. They have to stay 300 range closer to you. Overall nerf there. And the overall length, range, shooting distance of his E, his stun, 75 less, and the width is 10 less. So going to be harder to hit those. Teemo got buffed, unfortunately. Blinding Dart's mana cost is down. I mean, it went down 20 at level 5. It went up pretty absurd. The R mana cost is normalized at 75 at all ranks. Doesn't go up as you level it. And the mushroom cooldown time is 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds less, depending on your level. Damn, Teemo. Zac has 5 more base movement speed, and a little bit of quality of life here. Blobs reform after 8 seconds at all ranks, but they changed it to reform faster depending on what your level is. At level 17, your blobs will reform yourself twice as fast, and you'll be able to get back into the fight faster. Alright, so they removed boost enchantments. You can't enchant boots anymore. I didn't realize that right away, and I was like, oh god, what happened? Devour is gone from the game, and it is replaced with Blood Razor. We went full circle. We're back to Blood Razor. 40% attack speed item that deals 3% of your target's maximum health as bonus physical damage with a cap on jungle minions and monsters. We've all seen that before if you played League long enough. Ginsu's has the old Sated Devour passive on it now. It doesn't do its old AoE extra damage with a ratio anymore. It does during Ginsu's Rage, every other basic attack will trigger on hit effects an additional time. It is basically what a Sated Devourer used to do. For a comparison, the item cost went up 800. It's way more expensive. It has a recurve bow in its build path now. Really awkward feeling. It has a recurve bow in its build path. You have attack speed in your inventory as you're building the item. Your attacks are faster. You're getting used to this faster attack speed. You can bind the item and you lose that attack speed. It's so awkward. I mean, you get it back by stacking the item, correct? You get 6 stacks now for 8 each, which gives you what, 48% attack speed. So you're getting a little more once it's fully stacked, but you lose the attack speed for stacking it, and if it's not stacked, it's just going to feel weird from how you've been playing the game. I think that's really, really weird. I really don't like that. Still gives you attack damage and ability power as well as the attack speed when you're hitting. The overall stats that it gives you is lower. It gives you 15 magical damage on hit now from the recurve bow that's in its combination. I mean, they could have just deleted that like they deleted the attack speed though, right? All right, and it no longer gives 2 stacks for being a melee champion. So melee champions and ranged champions both have to hit 6 times with this. No benefit to being a melee champion, unfortunately. But yeah, kind of weird. I don't know where it's like going to fit into builds on champions where I actually used to build it because it's very expensive. It's very, very expensive, actually. Huge Black Cleaver buff for champions that build it. It lost 5 AD, but its overall combination cost went down 400. That 5 AD is worth far less than 400, and the fact that it's 400 less lets you get it a lot earlier, and you might be able to get it on a power spike that you wouldn't have been able to reach before. You're going to be able to get it before or at the same time that your enemy's getting their items rather than having to wait for so long, and then by the time you get it, it's not nearly as effective as if you got it on your last back. You got to keep in mind 400 gold might not seem like a lot, but you go back to base, you might not have that 400 gold when you go back. So you have to go back out, and you might not be back into base for 5 minutes. That's a 5-minute difference in when you would have got this item. Or you're just walking back out to farm 400 gold and going back to lane, and you're kind of wasting your time. So it actually ends up being a pretty big thing. Spectre's Cowl gives you less magic resistance, but more health, but it costs 100 more. Here's a change. I really, really like this change. Banshees is now 450 gold less, and it builds out of a Spectre's Cowl and a Negatron. So if you need a shit ton of MR, you want some health with that, you get a Spectre's Cowl. In order to get that extra bonus magic resistance, you were going to have to fully combine it into a Spirit Visage or a Banshees, but now you can just buy a Negatron. It's going to build into the Banshees eventually anyway, but it gives you the magic resistance right now. But the Banshees gives you 300 less health. Sorry, 200 less health. For that 450 less you're paying. But you can get this very easy. Spirit Visage, still the same price, so it's a little bit more expensive than the Banshees. It also gives you less magic resistance, 15 less. Gives you more health regen, though. Doesn't really matter as much for losing the magic resistance. But it maintained its original health. I think it still gives you 400 health, whereas the Banshees gives you less health, more MR. Spirit Visage gives you more MR, less health. And the Spirit Visage passive healing increase was actually increased to 25% instead of 20%. Before it was very little choice. Like you'd usually almost always go for the Spirit Visage just for the chances when you got healed, especially if you're a tank because you didn't really care about that spell shield on the Banshees. Now there's actual thought and reasoning into what one you're going to be getting. Maybe you're getting the Banshees simply because you wanted extra magic resistance in lane and got that Negatron cloak on top of your Spectres. I really, really like that change. Guardian Angel costs 300 less, gives you 10 less or 15 less magic resistance, but you can get it faster and more effectively. Quicksilver and Merc Skim, another huge change here. Quicksilver and Merc Skim, they don't cleanse debuffs anymore. They only cleanse CC debuffs. Malzahar ult, Warwick ult, suppressions, those are CC debuffs. It'll cleanse those. Zed ult, Fiora ult, Trundle ult that are just straight debuffs, won't cleanse those. Dots, damage that you're trying to cleanse, won't cleanse those either. So I'm really surprised Zed hasn't been played a lot more often with that lately. But maybe we'll see more Zed in the future here. Hex Drinker and Maw and Sterix Gauge. They're all classified as lifeline effects now. so they don't proc at different times because they had different triggers on them. If your Sterix procs and you have a Maw or Hex Drinker, the Maw or Hex Drinker will proc at the same time. If your Maw or Hex Drinker procs and your Sterix hasn't, your Sterix will proc at the same time. You will only get the shield from one. So if it was your Sterix that procs, you get a Sterix shield. Your Maw procs goes on cooldown but doesn't give you a shield. But it's on cooldown until it's up again. Something interesting with this, though, is that Sterix Fury and Maw Life Grip are now both granted when either lifeline trigger. So you don't get the shield, but to get to the 30% health with the Maw, to get the Spell Vamp, Lifesteal and Spell Vamp on it, you have to get pretty low. Say you get bursted down from full health really quickly, your Sterix procs, your Maw procs, you're not going to have that Maw lifeline shield when you get lower, but you are going to have that Maw passive. It's just the shield that's not shared. It's the passives will both work at the same time, as far as the damage from the Sterix and the healing from the Maw. Bambi Cinder lost 20 health. Sunfire Cape went up 200 gold. That's actually really awkward to buy it now. Still really strong. Cinder Hulk got buffed pretty hard. By the time you get it, it'll be about the same amount of damage, but it scales a lot harder into the game. You'll be getting, by the end of the game, 18 times 2. You're going to be getting 36 from that, 43 damage from the Cinder Hulk. The Cinder Hulk used to give you less than 27. I did easy math there. But it's on par with Sunfire damage to champions, because a lot of people were just building Runic Echoes in the jungle on tank junglers just for the movement speed, and then building a Sunfire anyway, because the Sunfire damage was way better than the Cinderhulk damage, and then they also got the armor with it. So there's that. Vision Wards have 1 less health, but they now regenerate health when they're out of combat. Big nerf to the blue trinket. It now is almost a minute longer cooldown early on, and later on in the game it is a 40-second cooldown longer, far less vision on it. This might be a buff to me because I honestly don't buy this item that much. I'd much rather get a yellow ward that stays down for a longer period of time in most situations, especially because I'm playing champions that are tanky sometimes that can face check bushes. On squishy champions, I'd still get this, but a lot less vision in the game probably because of that. Righteous Glory is 100 gold cheaper, has the new Catalyst passive because it builds up the Catalyst. No longer gives your team movement speed, but it gives you movement speed still. 15% more. You get 75% movement speed for an extra second longer, so for 4 seconds. And when you get into range to proc it and slow them, it only slows them for 75 only, down from 80. But that 75% slow is a 2-second slow. So maybe you didn't speed up your teammates, but they'll make it there in time while the enemy team is still crippling away. Change to Warmogs here. Price is unchanged, 50 less health, but now it has cooldown reduction, so it'll feel better for champions to build it. Mundo, for example. Mundo might want to build this now. There's not very many items that give cooldown reduction. Well, there wasn't. There is kind of now. That were for tanky characters, because if you looked before, it was mainly mana items. They either had mana regen or mana on them, and Mundo didn't care about those. Relic Shield charge cooldown is down by 20 seconds, so buff there, but the healing per charge is down by 20, so nerf there to match that. And Targon's shield is 40 health healing per charge instead of 50. Spell Thief's line has a little bit less mana regen, and Arcane Sweeper got renamed for 3s if anyone's ever heard that there's a 3s mode in this game. Grievous Wounds, oh, that might be on ARAM as well. I don't play ARAM, I don't know. Grievous Wounds, used to only affect self-healing. So if you had a Soraka on the enemy team and you were trying to kill their AD carry and you ignited him, Soraka doesn't care. The Grievous Wounds on that only affect the self-healing. The Soraka's incoming heals would not be affected. That was very annoying, and that's why Soraka was so annoying to play against. Grievous Wounds now affects all healing received by 40%. The Last Whisper that gives you the Grievous Wounds over the one that gives you more damage is going to be far more effective now, because you're going to be able to grievously wound everyone that you hit with it, which is going to help your team out in the long run quite a lot. Skin clarity updates and bug fixes and some upcoming skins here. We actually made it to the end of this patch. My throat is super sore. This one actually ended up being another 24-minute video, so I think there's over an hour easily of videos for this. I don't think I've done a presentation all through my post-secondary education as long as some of these patch note videos that Riot makes me do. Well, they don't make me do it, but they make me read this patch, and I said I'd do the video, and you get where I'm going. Anyway, I'm happy that is over. Hopefully you found that helpful. Hopefully you could find something in the super long video. A lot of people might not even be watching anymore. Fallen asleep by now. But anyway, if you're still awake, found it helpful, make sure to drop a like on it. If you're new to the channel, go check out the rest of the channel. If you enjoy what you see, make sure to hit the sub button. I'd appreciate that. My social media links as well as my stream links are in the description underneath the video. You can check those as well. And other than that, thank you very much for watching, guys. Take it easy, and we will see you next time.